Welcome to Find Myself Free, the podcast. I'm Ellie Young, alcohol-free life coach, mom, and athlete. I'm dedicated to helping others change their relationship to alcohol by sharing my journey of transformation. Fascinated by my own capacity for change after decades of gray area drinking, I'm passionate about sharing what I've learned from neuroscience and positive psychology to help you break free from the drinking cycle and unlock your true potential. Hear my personal stories of triumph and struggle as I navigate raising two boys, finding myself after 40, building a business, and doing it all alcohol free. From women's health and cycle syncing to fasting and biohacking, this podcast is your roadmap to a healthier, purpose filled life that starts with changing your relationship to alcohol. It's time to embrace change, find balance, and create the life you were meant for. Welcome to Find Myself Free. Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to welcome this guest onto the show today. She reached out to me over Instagram and we started chatting, and I love everything that she is doing. It marries so well with what I am doing. And I have so many questions and took so many notes on today's episodes, and I know you will do the same. So, Taylor Lechner is a registered dietitian and founder of Nourished by Taylor. She specializes in identifying and treating the root causes of hormone imbalances. She works one-on-one with women to help them safely transition off of birth control, symptom-free, and repair their body after birth control. She has an extensive background working with eating disorders and practices from a non-diet lens. So without further ado, let's welcome Taylor to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Find Myself Free, the podcast. I am very excited to introduce today's guest, Taylor Lechner. She is a registered dietitian and founder of Nourished by Taylor. Welcome to the show, Taylor. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. We connected over Instagram, and Taylor has an amazing story, and what she does marries so well with everything I'm doing here at Find Myself Free. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I help women specifically transition off of birth control without any adverse side effects, or if someone has quit birth control cold turkey and they're experiencing what I like to call hormonal chaos, I help them kind of reverse engineer, heal their hormones without restriction. I have a history working with eating disorders, so I very much keep my roots of non-diet, all foods can fit, food is nutrition. You and I were chatting about that a little bit before we hit record, to really help women heal their hormones and not feel restricted and to get to the root of those nasty symptoms.
Wow, I can't tell you how many of my clients have experienced this. And, so many of us were put on birth control to control bad periods, right? Which we didn't know at the time was hormone imbalance. That usually meant something was wrong with our diet. There was something toxic in our environment, something wrong with our overall health. And instead, they just gave us a pill.
Yeah. 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 And the reason I'm doing this is previously, like I mentioned, I worked with eating disorders for about 8 years. And that was from my own personal struggle with an eating disorder that went undiagnosed. Once I got in the field and I healed my own relationship with food and my body, I wanted to help other people not have to go through what I did. And that was the same thing with making my transition into women's health. So I was put on hormonal birth control when I was 18 years old when I lost my period from an undiagnosed eating disorder. And my doctor never, you have like a quick doctor's appointment and he never asked, what's your eating like? What's your relationship like with food? Like I was very underweight, and you don't have to be underweight to have an eating disorder to be clear, but it was pretty obvious that I was struggling with something. But instead of digging deeper, they were like, here, you can have the birth control pill and that'll keep your bones healthy and will give you a period and you can just stay on it till you want to have kids, which there's a lot wrong with that, in my opinion. And so I was on it for 10 years. And I distinctly remember I was driving to go get takeout food. And I was like, I'm going to listen to a random podcast. So I literally just looked up a new podcast that I'd never listened to, and it was someone called Alyssa Vitti or Vitti. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, but she wrote the book In the Flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was on as a guest at this random podcast I had chosen, and she was talking all about the negative effects of hormonal birth control. And I just remember I was sitting in my car and I was like, what the heck? I did not know any of this. Here I was with a master's degree in nutrition, like really invested in my health and the health of others, lots of experience working as a dietitian at that point. And I had no clue, one, that I wasn't actually getting a true period on the pill. Like that's what I was told. And I thought this entire time. And two, I had no clue that it was actually harming my body in these ways. So I made the after doing some more research, I made the personal decision to just quit taking birth control cold turkey. And I didn't know any better. And my doctor basically said, she was like, yeah, you can just stop and see what happens. And it was fine for a few months. And then I would say about 3 to 6 months afterward, I had sky high anxiety. My face broke out so bad. I'd always struggled with acne. But it was the worst it had ever been. It was so embarrassing, so painful. And I did get a period back, but I later found out through my own testing that I wasn't having a true period. It was still like that fake period that you get on the birth control pill, which I didn't even know you could have an anovulatory period after the pill. So just experienced all of this hormonal chaos. And I went to my doctor and she was like, well, it sounds like you just have to go back on the pill. I went to my dermatologist for my acne. Same thing. We tried a couple like rounds of antibiotics. We tried lots of different topicals. I spent thousands of dollars trying to figure these things out on my own without any support. And the only solution providers would come back to was sounds like you just have to go back on the pill, which I knew at that point wasn't what I wanted to do and wasn't actually helping or getting to the root cause of what like you said, like the actual imbalances in my body. And so that's when I decided to like take things into my own hands. And that's what shifted me. I found the world of functional nutrition and root cause approach and did lots of my own research and digging and mentorship. And that's when I decided to shift away from eating disorders to really focus there because it is such a need that is, there's a huge gap in women's health, specifically around birth control use.
I mean, it's huge. It's a huge gap. As deep as I've gone into this science, and again, my most of my focus has been in kind of the later perimenopausal space, but I am just dumbfounded by how much we don't know about this drug that every woman is put on
Mhm.
just blindly across the board. Um, Thank you so much for sharing your story. But I would love for you to go into a little more so where everyone understands that you actually aren't having a real cycle on the pill. Tell us how the pill controls our hormones, and so it produces kind of like what you would call a fake cycle.
Yeah. So when you're on hormonal birth control, basically you're not having your natural hormone fluctuations. As a woman, I always call it like our superpower. You might refer to it similarly. So many times people are like, oh, my period's about to come, or like, oh, these hormones. But when your hormones are functioning optimally, if you're living a balanced life and they aren't being artificially treated with something like the birth control pill, it's actually a really cool thing. So the birth control pill, though, it shuts down our natural hormone production. So those natural ebbs and flows are flatlined. So you're basically consistent with your hormone levels throughout the entire month instead of having them kind of flow up and flow down. And when you aren't having those natural fluctuations, you're not ovulating, and no ovulation equals no true period. So you're having what we call like a fake period where you're bleeding, but it's not truly a period because you're not having those hormones that are involved with it and you're not ovulating.
Right. Yeah, I've understood this before, but I don't think people really grasp that you are denying your cycle. And Elisa Vitti, I love that book. It's like a Bible to me in my work. It's really the foundation of my cycle syncing that I teach. That in a combination with Fast Like a Girl by Dr. Mindy Peltz. I love her. But the the superpower that is our fluctuating hormones. Talk more about that because I love this idea that like first we've been taught to dread it, that all these fluctuations are what is bad, but it's complete opposite. They actually give us profound gifts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. How much time do we have?
Yeah.
We have? So, I mean, really, in a nutshell, with cycle syncing, right? Like you can sync your workouts, you can sync even, I have a cycle syncing, we didn't talk about this, but I have a cycle syncing nutrition book where it talks about like during different points in your cycle, you might benefit from like more of these types of foods or, for instance, like the latter phase of your cycle, that's when you're more in like that rest phase. Like that's when you can do some like self reflection. That's when you can really, take more naps and do less intense exercise, really nourish your body in that way versus the beginning of your cycle is when you're like, I'm ready to go socialize and I'm ready to like hit those workouts hard. And, so depending on where you're at in your cycle, you have more strengths and they're not weaknesses, they're more strengths. So I think just like flipping the script and the mindset around that is a really powerful thing because guys don't have that. They are flatlined throughout the entire time and that works for them, but it is something that is a gift to us that we have and we can take advantage of it.
Exactly. Yeah. I do a lot of mindset coaching around in the cycle syncing that recognizing that every part of this is gifts. And when you do need to go into that nurture phase, what women would dread, what women would typically call like the PMS phase is, first of all, you don't have to experience PMS, right? If your
Yep.
hormones are balanced, you feel good. I love to brag on here that I am going into my sixth cycle symptom free, which is completely wild because I used to rage out like at a particular day of the month at my family and I would get super sore boobs. I would usually get a couple breakouts, just very typical stuff that we're all taught that is a given,
Yeah.
that you can't avoid it and that some women just have it worse than others and they're just unlucky,
Yeah.
right? We're not taught that we have any power or autonomy over how to balance these things. Um,
Yeah.
and that the only option is to just completely deny the cycle and take a pill, which is, ugh, I think that we're going to look back on this like 50 years from now and be like, there was a time when we gave women this pill that denied them this biological rhythm that that they need to have for healthy lives.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's something it does have a lot of negative side effects. So, fun fact, I think Alyssa talks about this in her book that you and I both have. That was the first book that I read about this. And that's again mind blown. But so everyone should read her books. She talks about how they have tested birth control like pills for men and they didn't move forward with it because of the side effects, which include like low libido and all the same things that women experience. So that's if one thing keeps me up at night, it's that fact, knowing that they have tested this on men and they haven't moved forward with it because of these nasty side effects, but women are just perpetually given this with experiencing those same things.
yeah, tell us more about some of these side effects, specifically the gut health. I'd love for you to tell us more about that.
Uh, so the birth control pill, some negative side effects it has, and then we can go deeper into some of them too, but it depletes vital minerals in your body. And we'll talk more about minerals, I'm sure. It also negatively impacts your gut. It causes inflammation in your intestines. There's a couple studies out there that I've read that actually show that it increases your likelihood of developing Crohn's disease for some women who have been on birth control. I forget how long, a couple years or so. So it can cause chronic inflammation in your body, including in your gut. And it also encourages the growth of bad bacteria in your gut while also killing the levels of good bacteria in your gut. So that's why a lot of times if women have been on hormonal birth control for a period of time, like they're having these nasty gut symptoms. And that's not something that any health professional I've ever talked to recognizes or even points out to women. I mean, I don't think they recognize that it's harmful to women at all, but
Right.
the gut health, I think, is a secret one that I see so many women in my practice experiencing because their gut is just a mess, specifically low levels of beneficial bacteria, too.
Yeah, I was only on birth control for a fairly short window because my side effects were weight gain and depression. And
Mm,
I just did not feel like myself. And luckily I was fairly young when I met my husband. I was 21 and I got married at 24. So I didn't have to be on control. I was able to kind of use other methods reliably for that time. And then after I had my second child, I went on an IUD like very quickly after he was born. And immediately the mild depression came back, and this like 5 pounds of water weight. It was bizarre. And this is hilarious, but I didn't wait around. They were like, "Oh, give it like 3 months for you to adjust to the IUD," and I didn't. I actually just took it out myself one night. Like I just was like, I reached up there and I was like, I felt the little filament and I was like, nope. And I pulled it out. You didn't, I couldn't even feel it. People are like, "Oh my God, you didn't go to the doctor for that." And I was like, it's like less than taking out a tampon. I felt nothing. Like within a couple days, I lost like 5 pounds of water weight and my mood lifted. It was, and so I was like, since that point forward, I never went on birth control again.
Yeah, and that probably could, the weight specifically, like just the puffiness too, could be from that mineral depletion, which is a huge side effect of that.
Oh, talk more about that. This is an area I've not heard about.
Yeah. So minerals are, and same. Like I mentioned, I went through 6 years of nutrition school and we touched on minerals like a couple of times. And they're so, so important though. So minerals are like spark plugs to our cells. Like our metabolism needs minerals, our thyroid needs minerals, our gut, our hormones need minerals. So if we're depleted in minerals, we're missing those catalysts that are basically making all of our cells healthy. Um, and I see a lot of women from not only the birth control pill, but from under eating, from dieting, from malnutrition, not fueling their body properly, and just stress. Stress is another thing that decreases our mineral load. And all of those things can result in mineral deficiencies. And the mineral test is one thing I run on every single one of my clients because it has such a profound impact on our health. And most people are mineral deficient. So I run the test just to kind of get a sense of like, well, what minerals do we need to replete that could be contributing to the hormone or gut symptoms that they're experiencing.
Wow. So are hormones, is a hormone imbalance causing um like a lack of minerals, or is it, I mean, obviously the pill causes that, but if like if
It's
women
like
are on the pill. Yeah.
So it's kind of the opposite. So a lot of people go straight to hormones, but we're actually missing like 10 steps before that. So minerals and just foundation, sleep, eating enough, and then gut health, those are the things that I'm looking at before we even go into hormones. Because when I first started practicing with more like the functional lens, and I made this mistake too when I first was in my hormone journey, I just jumped like to hormone testing
Mhm.
and it showed me kind of what was going on, but it doesn't give you info of like, well, what you need to do. Like, sure, you can supplement and stuff like that. But if your gut's a mess, if you're depleted in minerals, if you're not eating enough or your sleep and your stress are just horrible, then your hormones are going to be off. So you have to like kind of
Right.
focus on those first. And then a lot of times the hormones will self-correct themselves.
Yeah, I have this conversation with a lot of my clients because everyone is really curious about hormone balancing, and it's like a really hot topic. It's very popular right now. Um, but they don't, and it's a comfortable place to go investigate in yourself, right? I can go to the doctor. I want to get my hormones tested, but do we want to talk about your diet? Do we want to talk about your gut health? Do we want to talk about your alcohol use? And that starts to get a lot more complicated for people. And but it is like a pyramid. It is like a cascade, and you have to go to the tippity top and start there, which for most women that I work with, it's their alcohol use because it's triggering so much cortisol and lack of sleep in their bodies. And from there, the insulin resistance, the hormone imbalance. And so it's just this kind of like domino effect.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so back to the minerals, like I drink Element electrolyte every
Mhm.
day. Sometimes I'll do two a day if I've sweat a lot. I have a sauna or I'll go to hot yoga or something. Is that sufficient to remineralize my body?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, I'm also a fellow hot yoga lover. So I love that. It really depends. And that's where I say test versus guess, because depending on what you're deficient in, that may or may not be enough. Element is definitely higher in sodium, which a lot of women do need more sodium because, it's so crucial and a lot of people avoid it because there's, you know,
Right.
conventional medicine will say like sodium's bad, but it's actually something, it's one of the main, what we call like macro minerals, minerals that you need in a high dose. So I'm definitely a fan of that. And it has a smaller dose of potassium and magnesium. So I see a lot of women specifically are low in all of those things. So element could be really helpful, but then we might want to look at, okay, we need to do some like trace mineral drops. We need to focus on potassium rich foods to like get that potassium up, coconut water. Um, so that's why I really like to test to identify specifically where imbalances in your body versus just kind of like guessing because it may or may not be what you need.
Interesting. Yeah. The one ingredient that I don't love that's an element that I have tried to eliminate in most of my diet is natural flavors.
Mm-hmm.
I've even emailed them about it and they never got back to me because it's like a product that I promote. I think I have a promo code that I used for a while, but I stopped because I was like, the natural flavor in there, as far as gut health, I know that can cause inflammation. It's a chemical. Do you, sorry, I'm going way off topic here, but do you know anything about natural flavors? Yeah.
No, I haven't dug into the research with that one as much. I mean, I know about artificial sweeteners and gut health, but not as much with the natural flavors. I'm interested in that though.
Oh, talk about artificial sweeteners and gut health. So I was a chronic Celsius drinker after I got alcohol free. I just basically switched to caffeine and there's sucralose in those and it totally would bloat me. And I finally cut that out of my diet and it actually wasn't even that hard. I was cutting it out not because of the caffeine, which was like way too much caffeine, but I cut it out for the sucralose and I totally it improved my gut health significantly.
Yeah, so I'm forgetting the exact mechanism, but I just know that there is lots of correlation between people who consume a lot of artificial sweeteners and bloating, diarrhea, gas, those types of things. So yeah, I'm forgetting exactly how it works, but I do know it does imbalance the microbiome quite a bit, which is
Right.
again a lot of those diet foods that have like the fake sugar, the sugar-free candy, and things like that. That's where I always recommend like the real food because that's one going to be more satisfying than a fat-free, sugar-free, flavorless version of it.
Mhm.
And two, it's going to be overall healthier for your body, more natural for your body.
Yeah. How do you feel about stevia as
I
like an alternative? Yeah.
I think stevia is a better option because it is more natural. But that's where I always go back to like ask people like everything in moderation and like what do you like the taste of? Like if someone really likes stevia and prefers to use that, cool. If they're like, I know I have one of my dietitian friends, she is like, I'm embarrassed about my coffee order if a client were to ever see it because she does use like Splenda in it. And like,
Yeah.
it's like I just love the taste. So that's where I'm like, everything in moderation, depending on what works well for you.
Right. Yeah, I know. I tried to move away from all of the OSE sugar substitutes and aspartame, sucralose. Oh, what is the other one? I mean, there's Nutraceut, Splenda. Those are all, to me, they cause inflammation in my gut. But I've leaned on stevia, monk fruit. I don't love, but I'm okay with it. And then there's the new one, allulose. Have you seen that one? That's like the new healthy sugar alcohol. But again, it's a sugar alcohol, which to me, it tends to like create inflammation. But I have seen it in more keto products now, which are like, they're super clean. There's only like a couple ingredients in these things, but they have the allulose to sweeten it. It's like they just keep trying a new one and a new one to get us like, oh, it's sugar free.
Yeah.
I would love for you to talk about this transition then. So if women are ready because they're like, I don't want to be taking this pill anymore, what is the best strategy to kind of wean yourself off this pill?
Yeah. So this is where, first and foremost, I recommend giving yourself at least 4 months of prep work. So don't quit cold turkey. I know, that's the mistake that I made. I didn't know any better. No one told me any better. So that's exactly why I do what I do, because I don't want people to have to experience that. So giving yourself at least 4 months to prep to come off the pill. And that's where getting some support from a professional is really, really helpful, like myself, where we can dive into okay, let's make sure you have a good foundation. So we're not just looking at supplements or, we have to make for sure you're eating enough, you're fueling your body, your stress is managed because the birth control pill, it's doing all those things we talked about. It's adding stress to your body, supporting those different organ systems in your body. So your liver, your gut, your minerals, your thyroid, all of that stuff. So I do with all of my clients like a deep dive nutrition assessment. It's about 90 minutes where we go really deep into first and foremost, like what were your symptoms before birth control? Why were you put on birth control? Because if you had really painful periods or missing period before going on, or that was the primary reason you got on birth control, if it wasn't actually pregnancy prevention necessarily, then I'm going to be diving into that stuff because that gives me clues, depending on what that is, of like where things might need some additional support, what body systems might need additional support. And then I always do some functional testing. So I always do the mineral testing in clients because that is foundational to healthy, balanced hormones and gut. And then depending on the client, if they're having a lot of GI symptoms, we might do a stool test to dive deeper to see if there's like overgrowth, if we need to support good bacteria. And then I also run targeted blood labs on my clients as well, just to see, again, there's some vitamin deficiencies we can see from that, as well as like iron recycling. That's a big thing. A lot of women have poor iron recycling, which isn't talked about in conventional medicine, but it's where iron is stored in the tissues versus circulating, and that can cause chronic inflammation. So we really want to make for sure that iron recycling is good because if not, that can lead to a lot of hormone imbalances with women. So we're really just focusing on honestly just getting to the root cause of what their symptoms are, either on the pill or before going on the pill, so that their body can be as optimally functioning as it can be for that big transition. Because, going back to the beginning of this conversation, the birth control pill, I mean, it is putting stress on your body and it's also like it's shutting off those hormones. So if your body is just kind of thrown off the deep end into like having to make its own hormones again and having to have those fluctuations, if your body isn't primed and ready, of course, it's going to be pretty crazy and you're going to have all those nasty rebound symptoms.
Right. Yeah, and it's so interesting that the pill really just masked the ongoing problems. Whatever health imbalance was happening, the pill just masked it. And so you might think you're feeling better, but it's like the most artificial band-aid that's really just prolonging
Yeah.
the healing of whatever is wrong in your body, and it's making things worse. Yeah.
Well, and that's, a lot of women I talk to, they're like, well, I'll just stop and see what happens. Or I feel like I'm good. Like I'll stop and see what happens. But this is where it's also, I mean, it's good to be proactive, but it's also good to have that support because I'm sure people have heard about horror stories of like, oh, you and I were even talking about this. I snapped at my kids, or, I just didn't even feel like myself. I had really bad anxiety or depression, or, just think about what could happen. Or again, if you had those symptoms before the pill, they're probably going to be worse if you don't properly address them. And coming off the pill doesn't have to be this big scary thing. That's exactly, what I help women do is to make that transition as smooth as possible because just because those things are common doesn't mean it's normal. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I always tell women is like just remember that if you're having like all these symptoms, even if your doctor doesn't like say anything or just is like, oh, like that's normal, that's not.
Yeah, so is there a way to do it seamlessly where you don't suffer? I mean, if you I mean, my piece, I mean, you do all these important labs, which is way more of like a deep dive, which is amazing. And then do you recommend kind of like a cycle syncing nutrition plan where yeah.
Yeah. So based on someone's labs, I wouldn't say it's necessarily as much cycle thinking. Like I definitely do that, but we'll focus really on repleting the body and correcting imbalances from the lab work that we see, because that's where it gets so individualized. Like I will never give a cookie cutter meal plan, or
Mhm.
even the labs I run are individualized based off the assessment, like what I learned from that. And so, for example, if someone is really low in potassium is really important for thyroid hormones to get in the cell. Like we'll really focus on potassium rich foods. If someone's low in this, that, or the other, like I tend to go more on the food first side.
Mm.
And then I do use supplements just for that, like to supplement it. And a lot of women who are chronically undernourished, they do need a little bit more support with the food piece and the supplement. So I'll give them customized nutrition. I focus a lot about lifestyle too. So my clients always joke, they're like, I feel like you're half dietitian, half therapist. Like,
Yeah.
especially with my, I actually have a minor in psychology too. That was the route I was going to go before I decided to be a dietitian. But a lot of this is so mental too.
Yeah.
So making sure you're setting boundaries, managing your stress, putting your health first, taking time to take care of yourself. I talk a lot about that with women because we do tend to put ourselves last, or we tend to, think like, oh, I'll take care of that after vacation, or I'll take care of that after the wedding, or something like that. So we'll talk about lifestyle and then with the customized nutrition and supplements, all of that blends together for a really holistic approach.
I love this. It's so necessary. And especially that piece about putting yourself first. I think that's probably the number one problem, like why we're here, is that all of these symptoms have been so normalized that we just think it's part of womanhood.
Right.
And so we don't proactively try to heal it, and we kick the can down the road and we think, oh, I'll get to that, I'll get to that.
Mhm.
And I love this, food first approach. That is 90% of the healing that can take place is cleaning up the diet. And I don't even like to call it dieting. I like to call it nourishing. And I've heard you use that word a lot. And I think it's really important, the language and the words we choose when we talk about this, because so many of us have been raised in this environment where it's just you're chronically dieting and we're trying to be something. This is, where the eating disorder piece comes in is I think all women have some version of an eating disorder. I think it's like a spectrum. And obviously, there's some that get incredibly severe, but I think we are all riddled and consumed by pressure, poor body image, and always, always, always watching what we eat. And with a really unhealthy relationship with food, it's always about depriving ourselves. Like, I can't have that. I'm going to deny myself that. And I'm a good girl if I stick to it, right? And I'm bad when I don't. And this relationship really infiltrates every aspect of this, specifically our hormonal health too, because we're unaware of just how much our nutrition is affecting our hormonal health. And that's just really what I love about your approach and the cycle syncing approach is like it's such a departure from, diet and culture. It's really about listening, tuning in. And I love that you take so many measurements because that's something that I don't do. I definitely work on mindset and I work on, hey, if we can clean up your nutrition in this regard, but there are some people that are still like, I'm doing all the things. What is missing? And that's where the testing would be really valuable to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I was like, nope, that's good. Yep, I
Yeah.
totally agree with that.
Yeah. So where if people want to work with you or find some resource that you provide, where should they go?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is on Instagram at Nourished by Tay. It's not Nourished by Taylor, Nourished by Tay. That other handle was taken already. So
Mm.
you can find me there, and always like my DMs are open if you want to kind of like chat through options. There's various ways to work with me. I also have a free, I'm sure you'll put this in the show notes, but a free recipe, healthy hormone recipe guidebook as well, and some options to work with me one on one, as well as just doing mineral testing. If you're curious about that as a starting point, I do offer that with some specific feedback and an initial protocol with that test. So, various ways to connect.
I love that. Yeah. And I think I have a number of clients that are looking to transition off IUDs and they're older, they're in their 40s. Sorry, this is one more random question before we sign off here. Is would it be different? I mean, I guess it wouldn't be much different for someone in their 40s transitioning off. You would do the same approach.
I would do the same approach, and I would actually, the longer you've been on birth control, the more important it is to prep because it's the longer that has been in your system, kind of causing these things.
Right.
So the only difference I would say is that, like, I would just give a shout out, like, that's even the longer you've been on birth control, the more important it is to like do this prepping beforehand so you have that seamless transition off. But it would be the same process of like foundations, the testing, the remineralizing, the gut repairing, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Luckily, if they've been working with me, they have been cycle syncing, but technically they're not having that cycle. So they're not really experiencing these incredible benefits of the cycle, of those superpowers we talked about. But I would think that they would be well prepared through the cycle syncing and cleaning up their nutrition to like step off of it now. But all of these additional tests, like I'm really interested in that remineralizing test. That's something I've not looked into, even though I like drink electrolytes all day long.
Yeah. Yeah, I call it's the hormone mineral testing bundle. So it includes, and the test is really cool. It's not invasive. It's a little sample of your hair. So you don't even have to go anywhere. I mail it directly to you and you take a small sample of your hair. And the cool thing about that is it shows you your mineral status for the past 3 to 4 months
Oh,
versus
wow.
blood draw is just one moment in time and blood will only show the mineral level outside of the cell versus your hair is showing outside and inside the cell. So it's a really good representation rather of your like your total mineral status, which is nice.
That is very cool. That is something I have not looked at. And thank you so much, Taylor, for reaching out and sharing this. I want to tell my listeners go get her hormone recipe book. That is a very valuable freebie. I am always looking for cool hormone recipes, hormone friendly recipes, and one-on-one clients. You do that as well, right?
One-on-one is in the hormone mineral testing bundle. Yep. And if
Awesome.
you're not sure what the best fit is, again, my DMs are open. Feel free to just like message me and we can kind of chat through options. And I also offer free discovery calls too for us to just see if it's a good fit.
That is fantastic. So check her out at Nourished by Tay. I will put that all in the show notes as well as links to her stuff there, guys. But thank you, Taylor. This has been so valuable. I took so many notes, and I think it's such a good supplement to the work I'm doing and to take a little deeper dive into this healing. And I hope all women share this episode, you guys. Send it to your friends. We are on a mission to get everyone off birth control, but we have to find lots of other methods to make sure we're, not having babies if we don't want to. So, um, look into your natural family planning.
Yeah. There are lots of other options out there. So, yeah.
All right, Taylor, thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Hey, you've just listened to an episode of Find Myself Free. And if some part of this left you wanting more, if your curiosity has been piqued and your intuition is telling you, I'm ready for more, then check out my coaching offers at findmyselffree.com. I have the Brave course to help you break free from booze. And I designed this course with the exact lessons that led to my transformation. I also have the balance challenge for those ready to learn the art of cycle syncing to balance their hormones. If you're looking for additional support and to take either of these programs to the next level, I also offer one-on-one coaching. Now, I worked with a coach for 4 months at the start of my alcohol-free journey, and it made all the difference. Being able to talk to someone who knew what I was going through and could help me navigate my new world gave me a foundation of support I could build on. And it's a big reason why I'm a coach today. I want to help others find their freedom and level up their health. If this sounds good to you, connect with me at findmyselffree.com and set up a call. Listen to your intuition that is telling you you were meant for more. I am with you. You got this.